Hello everyone, this is my 2000 Ford Ranger 3-liter four-wheel drive. It has a really nasty problem with a sticking slip yoke, and the symptoms of this failure is that when first accelerating or when you come to a stop, there is a thud or jerk in the drivetrain. And so this is very common among Ford Rangers, also F150s, and so this video is to help you to resolve that issue permanently. First thing we want to do is consider safety. So I've got the parking brake set, but that's not going to be sufficient. Once I remove the drivetrain, I want to have some extra security in place. And so you'll notice I've got the wheels chalked both front and rear, and got the truck in a secure place and ready to begin work. I'm underneath the vehicle now, and as you can see, the first thing I'm going to need to do is remove the drive shaft, which is here, all the way down to the rear end. But before I remove the drive shaft, I'm going to want to mark where it's located in relation to the rear end and the crankcase. By the way, there is the slip yoke that's giving me difficulty. So what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of paint, and I'm going to mark the drive shaft and the transfer case, identifying where it is located. So a little bit of paint. There's the drive shaft, and there is the transfer case. Drive shaft, transfer case, and I'm just going to put a little extra up here just to make sure I can get it exactly right. So there we go. I'm going to do the same on the rear end. Step is going to be to remove the 4 bolts that hold on the drive shaft to the rear end. And in order to do that, you'll need a 12 millimeter wrench like this, or if you have air tools, that would be better. I don't. Nonetheless, the closed end will fit on the bolt, and then you will need to probably use a little leverage in order to break it free. I also sprayed the bolts with a little power breaker, penetrating oil, to help get them loose. Mine were pretty rusted on. Okay, now as you can see, all the bolts are out, but the drive shaft is still attached to the rear end, and that's just because of pressure fit and rust. And so I'll need to break that free, and so we'll do that next. The truck here, and so you'll notice that we've got the exact same thing. So I'm just going to take my 12 millimeter wrench, using the box end and adding a little bit of leverage, and going to remove those 4 bolts next. I wasn't able to get to one of the bolts on the drive shaft because it was located at the top and not accessible. So what I did is I jacked the truck up just enough to get the wheels off the ground, and then by hand turned the wheels about a half a turn while the vehicle was in neutral. It wasn't cranked. My chocks are still in place. I'm not under the vehicle, but I just turned it, and that allowed the drive shaft to turn a half turn and put that single bolt in a position that I can now remove. Okay, so the drive shaft was kind of stuck to the rear end a little bit, so I just took my jack handle and put it right here, used it as a pry bar, and gently pried out the drive shaft from the rear end. It broke free pretty quickly once I put just a little leverage to it, and you can see I've got my jack underneath just to try to make sure it doesn't fall and hit the concrete floor here. So drive shaft's about to come out. We'll take a quick detail of exactly what that slip yoke. And here we go. There's the slip yoke, and as you can see, this is designed to slide in and out, and it feels really smooth, but believe it or not, under torque, it sticks and binds. And so you'll notice that there's a cable tie here. I had previously tried to lubricate it underneath the truck, using regular axle grease or bearing grease. And this alleviated the problem for about a day or two, but it came right back. And so what I'm about to show you is what I believe to be the permanent fix and the way that it should be repaired. Okay, so what I'm about to do now is also really important. I'm going to go back to a little paint, and I'm going to mark the drive shaft, both front and rear, so that I can ensure that I get the front and rear located back in the proper association with one another. Failure to do this or failure to mark the drive shaft, as in the beginning of this video, can result in a unbalanced drive shaft and some vibration. So you want to make sure you do that before you disassemble it. So now that I've got that done, I just want to show you very quickly what the inside looks like. So the boot slips off, and now you'll be able to see a couple of things. You can see the splines on the drive shaft and the receiver here, the mating receiver. So you can see they still actually have some lubrication on them, but unfortunately that amount is not sufficient to prevent binding, and it's not the proper type of grease. So what I'm going to do next is clean these up with a little brake cleaner, and then I'll demonstrate the proper grease and how to apply it. See, I've taken some brake cleaner and I've cleaned this absolutely as best as I can all the way down the splines, and then also here I've got this perfectly clean using brake cleaner, a lot of patience, and some paper towels. So you don't want two things. You don't want any old grease in there, especially if you've done what I've done and put regular bearing grease in there to try to make the repair. And then two, you want to make sure that the brake cleaner is completely dry and out of there as well, because when we apply the new coat, we want it to adhere to the spindle and the splines. An important part of the repair is what I'm going to reapply is made by Motorcraft. It's called PTFE lubricant. On the back of the can, it specifically says eliminates grunt type noise in drive shaft slip yokes. So the PTFE is a special designed lubricant that has Teflon in it. It adheres to the metal so that it doesn't slide out, but rather bonds to it, and provides the kind of lubrication that will last over many, many cycles without being displaced by the movement of the slip yoke. So what I want to do is apply a thin coat first, and then allow that to set up just a bit, and then go back and apply a much heavier coat, making sure every part of the slip yoke is well covered. It's about $30 from Motorcraft, but well worth the money if you've gone through this much trouble to get the drive shaft out. Yeah, I've got a nice heavy coat of lubricant on all the spindles, and I've got quite a heavy coat inside of here. You're not able to reach all the way down the splines with your fingers. It's quite deep, and so I've packed extra grease at the top so that it will push down into the coupling there. Should cover all the splines. So I'm ready to reassemble, and remember, when I go to reassemble, I'm going to want to make sure that the part I marked with paint lines up with the part that is also marked. So, should be able to put this back together pretty quickly. The drive shaft back together here, and you'll notice that I used cable ties, 2 of them, large cable ties, to secure the front of the boot. From the factory they use this steel band, and you can actually purchase a kit with that band. I don't have the tools, and so I opted for the cable ties. A lot of people do use cable ties. I'm sure they're not as durable, but for the age of my truck and the application, I'm okay with that. So you'll have to decide. So it's time to reinstall the drive shaft in reverse order to the truck, and should be ready to go. I'm reinstalling the drive shaft, and you'll remember we marked it earlier, and now that I've moved the vehicle, obviously things have changed. So it's important now that I check and make sure that I've got everything in the proper place, and so if I look here, I can see the paint on the particular bolt head location on the transfer case, and I can confirm that on the drive shaft. So I know I've got things lined back up properly. All I need to do now is just to secure it with the 4 bolts I took out, and we should be ready to drive. Are all back together, problems resolved, and so I wanted to let you know it took me about 2 hours to do this all together. I only have hand tools, so obviously if you're a skilled mechanic and have better equipment, you probably don't need this video and probably wouldn't take you very long to do it. You also would probably want to check out a Haynes manual to make sure all the steps are covered. I'm pretty much a novice, but thought this might help some folks out there, so good luck and take care.